And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have an old friend back on the show. We've got Dara Sanders here from the Alexandria Film Festival, and we're going to chat about how things have been since the festival from last November, as well as the festival experience. But before we dive in, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video and others like it with your friends and family, and even nemesis. We could use the love and support, and it's a great way to show that you like the content. But let's go ahead and dive in. Dara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. I mean, because the last time we spoke, it was around September, so this was like 2 months before the festival started. And I remember we had a really interesting conversation about
We did.
what the film scene was like in Northern Virginia, as well as the festival itself.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the festival ran from the 11th to 13th of November.
Well, yeah, like 10th. I would say the 10th. Usually
10th,
we
okay.
have like private events for like the filmmakers, things like that. In the past, we've done premieres on that Thursday. So it runs like from Thursday to Sunday, essentially. Sunday is when we have
Okay.
our closing ceremony and award ceremony.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, and I was gonna say, you actually had the distinctive honor of being the first film festival organizer onto the podcast. So I don't think I mentioned it at the time, but but I do want to give you a shout out for that, because it was such a great honor to have you come on and just chat with us about the about the Alexandria Film Festival. So how was it? What movies kind of stood out during during those screenings, and maybe can you talk about the filmmakers who came, and what was learned, what was discussed, and what and maybe what what plans have been made for this year's festival run.
Sure. I can talk about that. I will say just off top, like it was one of the more successful years we've had, ticket sales wise.
Okay.
I think that besides that, because kudos to us and our volunteers and our executive board, but also I think what we did this past year, was try out something a bit different, which was have an expanded venues. So normally how our festival works is we'll have a dedicated venue on Friday, and that's generally the Beatley Library. Beatley Library is so great because we can have free content and we can have people come, and it's really cool to have people come, and it's free. And the library is really good about, they have really upgraded facilities. It's Charles Beatley Library on Duke Street in Alexandria. And so we usually, what we did this year was we had student films. We had a student film showcase because we had amazing student films that submitted this past year. And so we had that, and it was like completely packed. And then we had an ALS film called No Ordinary Campaign. And the subject was a former Obama staffer. I can't think of his name, but it's an amazing movie. And it was really cool to have that and have it free and have a panel afterwards. And we had some of the other subjects who are dealing with this disease as part of the panel. So it's very illuminating. The director came. It was really good because, the film itself talks about the kind of campaign to pass bills for medicine, research, it's always the same thing when it comes to afflictions and diseases and cancers, right? It's always about putting the money into research to find cures, to find something to prolong life, all these different things. And so the film is amazing, but also very emotional. It's a very emotional film. So we did those two showcases at Beatley, and that went extremely well. So that was like a good harbinger for potentially what the festival weekend would be. And so Saturday and Sunday, we had two locations. for the past, I would say 8 years, we've been at AMC Hoffman, which is really cool because we allow filmmakers to have their film on the big screen. And that's really a good selling point for our festival. However, this year we had tremendous technical difficulties. The AMC changed how they project films. And so they were no longer taking a hard drive like disc, DCP. You're familiar with DCPs, right? So
yeah.
Right, that you need a DCP to show in certain venues, right? For example, movie theater requires a DCP. So we tell filmmakers, if you're selected to screen in the AMC venue, then we're going to require a DCP. And the easiest way for that to happen is to have it on a disc. And we didn't have a projector to kind of manage the Q&As. And AMC farmed out that responsibility to somebody independent that we hadn't worked with. So we had a lot of, let's just say we had an adventure.
Now, did they give you a heads up about all this, or did they just tell you at the last minute?
Well, we found out probably a week and a half beforehand.
Oh.
And this is like, oh my God. So we're scrambling to get alternative hardware from the filmmakers after they've been accepted to expedite it, right? Express ship it, like all these different things that we had to have in order for it to play because we needed backup copies. So like in some cases, like you can screen it through a laptop. And so that was potentially possible. The problem was with some of the Blu-rays we had, there was, what do you call it? Feedback. So that's tough, right? Especially for a feature. To have feedback throughout the film is not good. So we had quite an adventure at AMC Hoffman. The other venue we had was the Lyceum Theater, and that's in Old Town. You know, that went pretty well. The only bad thing was that I think the elevator broke. That was an issue, you know, because it's an old location. And we have a demographic that skews older. And so that can be a challenge, you know, so that was tough. So we had quite an adventurous weekend, but we had a very successful weekend. In terms of the films and the filmmakers, we had a lot of filmmakers attend. So we had a lot of Q&As, and that's always great, but it also caused a lot of showcases to run over. And that's something I think, you know, with a film festival, when you do showcases, you can try your best to schedule, okay, we have a 3-hour block, a 2-hour block. We can assume that a Q&A is only going to take, you know, 7 minutes for a short, 10 minutes for a feature, but you just don't know. You start off with, you know, you'll have somebody, a volunteer, start off the Q&A or moderate it, and then you'll go to the audience. Well, the audience might have a lot of questions. It really depends, you know, on the film. Some films evoke a lot of, you know, questions, right? I mean, you know, if it's like a documentary, we had one documentary called Bloodlines of the Slave Trade that we recently screened again, but there were connections to Alexandria, Virginia. So the film is about 2 descendants of a slave trader, one black, one white. And it's an interesting look at, you know, how people learn about their ancestry and kind of learn about their history and kind of what effect it has on them, and kind of looking through history, kind of taking them on that journey to find out more about their ancestors. And so, like I said, we did a screening this past Sunday that sold out. But that particular screening, we also screened a film called 1809 that was a feature about two slaves who were in a romantic relationship that ran away, that had a plan to run away to go north.
Mm-hmm.
And that screening was, you know, the people in the audience loved it. And the filmmakers were just filled with knowledge. And the Q&A, I think the Q&A lasts, like I told, like 30 minutes.
Really?
Which is not, it could
I,
have gone on. Like,
because because when you think about a Q&A, sorry to interrupt, but when you think about a
no, go
Q&A,
ahead.
I mean, and it's funny too because we did an interview with with an independent filmmaker a few months ago. We were talking about his movie about a guy who was undergoing psychological trauma,
Mhm.
and what surprised me was the fact that for I think it was like 7 or 8 minute long film or short film, it took us about over an hour to discuss the merits of the movie, and it always surprises me that when you watch a movie, you think, oh, there's really not much to go on because it's just,
You would think.
yeah, because it's like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, all right, and that's it. But but it's just so shocking to see that people have so many questions and so many opinions that they want to voice,
Yep.
even then you think, oh, this is going to take just like 10 minutes, but it goes over to 30 minutes, and it's like, this is I mean, there's really no words for it because it's just so it's just so strange. So so I do want to go off tangent for a little bit. So I
Yeah, go
mean,
ahead.
so 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 how many venues did you have? Like two for this
We have
year?
3 total. So
Three
we
total.
always
Okay.
do the library. We did the Lyceum. What we did at the Lyceum was, so the Beatley Library ran from 12 to 5, which is nice
Okay.
and tight, right? 2 showcases, Q&As, nice and tight, no issues, great crowd, all of that. AMC Hoffman, we ran from 12 to, I think one night it went to 1 a.m. actually, but about literally the entire day. And
Gotcha.
then the Lyceum was 11 to 4, I believe. And that was enough for about 3 showcases.
And you did
And
mention that you actually had a lot of filmmakers come this year too, and a lot
we
of, and
we did. And that's the thing about when you program films for a showcase, how can you do it when you don't know who's coming, right?
yeah, and that's the point I
So,
was trying to get at too,
right, go
because
ahead. Yeah.
yeah, because they're really, because when you get a lot of a lot of interest and a lot of entries, that's a good thing, but you also don't want to be in a position where you're like, oh shit, like, what do we do? Because we've got these three venues, but we only have them for like certain hours, for certain days of the weekend. And then, not to mention that sometimes you have, you know, a huge, an unexpected interest in these filmmakers to where you kind of have to, ask yourselves, how do we accommodate, the interest in the filmmakers without being disrespectful to them? At the same time, you want to give, every filmmaker who's in attendance, the opportunity to shine, because let's say, for instance, if I were, if I were a filmmaker and I submitted an entry,
Mm-hmm.
to the Alexandria Film Festival,
Mm-hmm.
but then the person ahead of me, gets a Q&A that's 30 minutes, and then you guys, go over time, and I'm only allowed 5 minutes. I'm going to be a bit steamed about that.
And
I mean, you know,
it's completely true. And I lean towards giving them room to theorize, go into detail about preparation. You don't know from one filmmaker to another, how verbose they'll be. Like, you have no idea. Like, if I ask one question, I remember one of the filmmakers, I asked him, I said, well, how did you prepare for such a heavy film? Like, what kind of research did you do? That was a 7-minute answer. How do you know that? How do you
right,
know that the filmmaker that, that's speaking on a short, essentially, is going to do that? And so I think I don't like to, typically, I want to do, what I typically try and do is at least 2 to 3 questions from the audience. And then, time permitting, we'll go forward.
right,
That's typically what I like to do, because we rely on these film goers, right? And so they want to have a share in the experience. They like having access to filmmakers. Like that's very cool, and especially if it's a film they really enjoyed and they're like, he's right there, like she's right there, like what,
Yeah,
tell me,
absolutely.
yeah, like, how did you film it? Did you use a drone? And all these different things that some of these ideas for certain films, you're like, where did that come from? So you want to give that grace, I think. And so I lean towards forcing potentially a showcase to run 20 minutes over. So now we're behind. Now, obviously, that's what happened
Hmm.
this past year. And so you have people like waiting outside for their showcase to start. And now the volunteers that have signed up for the festival who think that, they're ushers, they're now saying to people, you can't come in yet, no, don't come in, and they're now like security essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
and they're also working overtime too. To
yes,
use that lingo right there.
exactly. They're working overtime, but we've always been, really, really lucky in the volunteers that we've had. We usually have people that come back year after year, but even so, when we have them, they're so committed and interesting. They're usually have some kind of connection to film. There's some interest that they have,
Oh yeah,
of
yeah.
course, right? That makes sense. And so they're really invested in it. And that's honestly, that's wonderful for us. So that's the only hang up of having a lot of filmmakers there. You don't know what to expect, but you really appreciate having them there, to talk with, especially because, you kind of want them to come back. You want them to submit next year if they have a film, or in 2 years. And the other aspect that's interesting for our film festival, and I think I mentioned this last time, maybe I didn't, you can look at a film because we get films from all over the world,
Yeah.
but you can assume that just because of, the filmmakers in Ireland, well, he's probably not going to come. And then he comes, right? Or the one,
Yeah.
you can't assume that. Like you can't, like you just don't know. And like, it's like the ones like that are on the West Coast in Oregon or, California. A lot of times, I would say half the time, they have a connection to Alexandria. They might submit because they grew up here.
Hmm.
So they want friends and family, right, to see their film. And that's always really cool, because when you talk to filmmakers, you're like, well, what made you, they might say it in the director's statement, which is kind of in the film, we use Film Freeway for our submissions.
Yeah.
Um, but like they might say that in the director's statement, you get an idea of their connection to Alexandria. And other times, they might just, our reviews are really, really good. They might just look at our reviews. They see, I've talked to filmmakers about other film festivals and kind of what they look like in practice, and the venues they offer, things like that. And if they have panels, all these different things, I always try and kind of not interrogate them, but kind of ask probing questions about their other experiences, just to see if there's something that we can kind of, use that, we have the capacity to do. And a
Right.
lot of times they do say they like the fact that their film can be in a movie theater. That's a big selling point for
Yeah,
us.
and I've interviewed other film festival organizers too, they're pretty much unanimous in saying, when you showed in when you show a movie in a film in a movie theater, right, and you have that red carpet affair, and you go all the way to try to give it that Hollywood treatment. There's just something spectacular about that, because now you feel like there's some validation, there's some legitimacy to
Oh
your
my
art, to
God.
your artwork,
Totally.
you know.
No, I mean, totally. And that's, they totally love that experience. And that's a big selling point, I think, for us, to have that. Um, but we do tell them there's no guarantee, of course. Like, we don't show all the films we accept in the movie theater because we do have other venues. So we can't promise that, you know. So, but it's, you know, if they are selected, yeah, they really appreciate the experience. I would say, you know, just to get to your other question about some of the films we had,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's always a mix, you know, shorts and features. People seem to really like the shorts showcase. And we try our best to curate it in a way that it's surrounding some theme, right? You know, we've done loss, celebrating women, things like, you know, something like that. There's something, some connection with the films we try to do. We try and do it in that way, I think. And the shorts showcases are always very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what you like to do is have anchor films, and those are features. And we've, over the years, we've had really, really good drama, thriller, documentary features. It's so rare to have like a comedy feature. That's our white whale, right? Like, it's so elusive. It's it's hard, and I think that's something that, you know, we end up curating. So, you know, we'll go, and I think we might have talked about this before, we'll go on other distribution platforms, right? And so, you know, the one we use is Festival Scope Pro, and so they have, you know, a listing of films from countries, and then you kind of negotiate, right? You pay for the film. You know, we've done that before to kind of boost, you know, other genres, right? To make it a more, we think, well-rounded festival, I think. But we got a good mix of, you know, documentaries, dramas. We always get a decent amount of comedic shorts, but like I said, the comedic features are very hard to come by. But I would say overall, you know, we there were a few films that we lost out on in the end because something happened where the film didn't come through, or we weren't able to access it. All these different things that happened that really sucked because they were like really good films. But we still, you know, like I said, put on a really, really fantastic festival. Um, I think we gave away about 8 or 9 awards. So for the past 2, 3 years, actually probably prior to that, because the pandemic doesn't count because we did it online and we did an online ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to that, we've always had Ted's Montana Grill cater the festival. The AMC used to allow us to have this. There's like a section of the theater. It's almost like it's like away from everybody. You can only access it. Only certain people can access it, and it's a very narrow kind of area in the theater where we can have our closing ceremony, and we'll have food, wine, all that stuff. And, you know, because Ted's Montana Grill, I mean, they just lay out the red carpet. I mean, they really, I mean, it's really great steak, crab cake, like all that stuff. Really cool. And they even donate wine, you know, so it's really cool. And then the past 2 years, we've had it actually at the restaurant. And so that's really cool. And I really like it for, I think, one of the things I like about having the filmmakers is when we have the young ones, you know, it's like their first film, it's their first film festival, they're local, and it's like overwhelming for them. That's always cool because I think we really try and focus on treating them well. We try and do a happy hour where they can mingle right before the festival kicks off. Um, this year, and I think, yeah, last year as well, we have a happy hour at the Athenaeum, which is a historical gallery in Old Town.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had the mayor there, and he declares it November Film Month, and he does a proclamation. It's a really, really cool event. And the filmmakers can mingle, and we can get to meet them kind of informally before the festival starts. And that's where I can, start to kind of pick their brain about different things we could potentially do kind of in the future. So,
Right.
yeah. And so I think for us, we want to continue to do that and probably expand on it. Like I told you before, with us, it's always manpower. So to get to your other question, that's what we focused on this year. So we had like this whole volunteer recruitment effort, and we've been able to get, I would say, a few more. I don't know how many. You know how with anything, like you start off with a certain number and then it kind of dwindles over time.
Oh yeah.
That always happens. So like for us, we're hoping we can get a good core group. So our idea is we have our executive committee, right, where we have the chair, vice chair, social media, communications, executive director, programming head, fundraising head, and then we have subcommittees for their duties, right? And so that way, we can start delegating more and not be overwhelmed. Because in the past, I think our our numbers were pretty low. And so everybody, by the time the festival's over, you're just like, I'm done. Your mind is just, you're so every day, 3 weeks to the festival, it's like every day crisis happens. We got to regroup, and how are we, getting the word out, all this different stuff. And it can be crazy, but the more people you have, the easier it is to kind of spread around the work. So that's what we're focused on this year.
So that does bring me to another point, and I've actually got a few points floating around in my head. But but I do want to ask how are you recruiting, and I don't know was the best way to phrase it. How are you kind of making them, I guess, incentivizing or making them interested in remaining committed to volunteering at the at the Alexandria Film Festival?
So it's early stages, number one. So we had an initial in-person meeting, because our normal meetings are through Zoom, and that's way too impersonal to do like an initial meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we start off with our first in-person meeting. We tell everybody a little bit about the festival. These are, introduce everyone, tell them about how the festival is run, how it works throughout the year, what some of the duties are, what are some of the things that we need to do to kind of make the festival successful. There's we use, you're familiar with MailChimp? We do a
Yeah.
So we do a newsletter every month where we have, and so what we have is, for example, you always have the listserv, right? So we have a list of, filmmakers. We have our insiders list and like a volunteer list, people that have volunteered in the past, like for the festival, but kind of only like that festival weekend. And so just doing a blast for volunteers to that are interested in serving is kind of how we got the first group to come. And once we do the kind of initial introduction, tell them about the festival, this might be, these are the different areas that we're looking for people. Think on it, let us know what you think. And then we'll reconvene in, I believe we gave them about another month, and then we reconvened again in person, and then you see, okay, how many people are going to come back, right? And then you see people select what they're interested in. So at that point, I think we had about 15 people.
Now, when you say the areas that they're interested in, what areas are we talking about here?
So you have programming and judging. So that's kind of, and of course, everybody's interested in that. So typically, Just for an overview, we start submissions on Monday.
Mhm.
Typically we do it later, but we're trying to do it earlier so we can get a jump on everything, so we're not so rushed in the lead up to the festival. So this year we're changing our schedule for submissions. So we're going to start submissions on March 4th. We will have, Film Freeway, you have accounts, you sign people up as judges. Um, and so as films come in, you start assigning them. And so you have those people like kind of that you can have for that initial review of films. Once that initial review is over, then you make a determination of the films that are kind of worthy of potentially being selected for programming. And then you start the programming stage. So that's kind of its own kind of committee. That also includes films that we screen throughout the year. Like I mentioned, we just screened a film last Sunday that we screened at the festival in November. So
Mhm.
that's one subcommittee. The other subcommittee is PR communications. So it's the newsletter, it's general communications, and that is press releases. The newsletter is kind of a big thing for us, and it kind of requires content. So content creators, essentially. Then we have social media. Social media, as you can imagine, is all about content, right? We want to keep people engaged. And what's interesting for us, I think, is because our demographic skews older, it's tough to know and also not recruit, but kind of get kind of the younger crowd, right? Like, do you stick with Instagram? Do you do more Instagram live? Do you do reels? Like, and so I think one of the things we were looking at for social media is kind of like fresh blood and younger people with a bit more energy and ideas, where we in our minds, as constituted are like, well, what would appeal? Like, what are some interesting things we can do to kind of play around with, you know, um, film festival awareness and outreach? Like, what are some of the things we can do? So that's, social media. And then, of course, it's outreach, right? So outreach events we do that are like kind of pop-up events that are just community events, like the like farmers market. So like last year in the run up to the festival, we had a booth at the farmers markets throughout Alexandria. So we would have a booth. It's actually a really good way to have, people, they'll pass you by, if it's, ornate enough. We had a pretty good booth. And so they're like, well, what's this about? And that's how you can kind of get people to kind of sign up. We'll have a volunteer sign up and kind of get them on the list, kind of get them informed about what you're doing, things like that. Because I think for the film festival, this kind of engagement is kind of important because we're in Alexandria, and even though I told you Alexandria is really big, you never want to hear someone in Alexandria say, I didn't know Alexandria had a film festival.
That's true.
You don't
That's
want to
very
hear
true.
that. You want everybody to know, and ultimately what you want is to say, well, the film festival, it's always Veterans Weekend. I know I'm going. I just got to figure out what I want to see. That's the goal, period. It's, it's not even like, you don't want the programming kind of to dictate attendance, right? You want your name to speak for itself, stand on its own, essentially. That's
Right,
ultimately
right.
what you want, I think. So yeah, and then we have fundraising, which obviously that's huge. So fundraising is tough for some people. It's tough for me, for example. But, if you can get kind of out of that shell, and just get, a good, a good number of people to kind of do their own part, you can, you can do pretty well, because we rely on, I would say, grants, We do Spring to Action, which is kind of a local thing. It's in April. It's a local kind of nonprofit thing where you tap into your network to raise money. It's like a campaign, so to speak.
Right.
And then just sponsorships. We have sponsors that usually come back every year, and then we try and get new sponsors. So that's the festival in a nutshell.
So are they so are these campaigns handled by volunteers then?
So what do you mean by that? The Spring to Action, or you mean the campaign, or what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess if I were to narrow it down, what like the marketing campaign, for instance.
Right. So the marketing campaign, so that's our vice chair does our PR and communications. So what we generally do is focus on PR communications and then social media.
Mm-hmm.
And then having our volunteers rely on their networks. So you want the initial, like I said, you tap into your insiders list, your volunteer list, and then as, film festival staff, we tap into our networks. And that's usually, we usually raise between 2,000 and 3,000, which is fine. But, we want to continue to push that, higher, because I wouldn't say it's an easy way to make money, but it's a quick way, I guess. If you have people in your life that support what you do, like, what you're involved in, it's a way to say, hey, can you spare 25 for this organization I'm involved in? And so the more you kind of reach out with that, it's a good way to kind of start off with like a good takeaway at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, because I remember chatting with filmmakers. The biggest obstacle they run into is just trying to get funding, and what they've always
Isn't it? It's all about
yeah. Yeah, and what they've told me was that the biggest problem is just trying to have someone donate part of their hard-earned cash to help fund this project. And
yeah.
I'll admit I'm not really good at sales, so the fact it's just trying to ask people for money is a bit intimidating.
It is. It's not easy, because you think, and actually we had a fundraise. It's so funny you mentioned that, because we had a fundraising meeting yesterday with some volunteers. And so like one of the things that our executive director mentioned was, don't look at it like, and obviously with the filmmaker actually is asking for it. But if you are a nonprofit, you try and think of it like you're asking for it on behalf of a nonprofit, and don't take it too personally.
Right.
Which probably applies, for if you're doing, but and to be persistent, which I think is harder for me. Like, is that, continue to say, oh, I don't know about this year. Well, when do you think, you might be interested? Just kind of keep pushing, and also go, to a place like, I think the executive, Patty, our executive director, said like right after
Mm-hmm.
she has a meal, right, and the bill comes, she'll say, can I speak to your manager? And then she'll do her talk like that at that point, right?
Yeah.
And then and she said, and go to a boutique or whatever, right? After you purchase something, hey, is the manager here? Like small business or something like that, which is, it's interesting, but there's different ways to do it. And I guess the more you can feel comfortable, it might be easier. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's just not easy.
Well, another thing too, is that whenever you're asking for money from from these people, I mean, I'm I'm pretty cognizant of the fact that these people are probably being asked, by probably like 5 to 10 other people for the same thing. So, so then the question becomes, what makes your organization different to where the person will say, yeah, of course I'll donate money to you guys instead of, let's say, Biden's reelection campaign, for
Right,
example.
right. And so I think one of the first things that was discussed at the meeting yesterday was, with the larger corporations, especially like banks and stuff like that, and I think Patty mentioned, was it well, I'm not sure about, but a bank that we've dealt with that has a VP for community affairs, because they set aside money to donate for the community, right? Like
Right.
they set aside money for that. And also I think, and another thing we mentioned is that because we're a 501c3, it is deductible. And we market it as, if you're a $500 sponsor for our festival, your website with the link, right? You're right there on our website, right? And we can show you the demographic, right? Our the people that attend our festival, our demographic is extremely, it skews older, but it also skews, they're more affluent. And these are customers that you want, like, so we do, there's a script we have, that we, and, just with like, I guess anything else, just kind of write it down and say, okay, well, what if they say this? This will be my response. And so that's kind of how we um, um, kind of curated the script, is to, you have this spiel, right? And then you have like, if they say, respond with, or things like, which is, I guess, something that, especially in Patty's experience, they likely say, right? So you just kind of make sure you're kind of always in their mind, like, just remember us, and we're community oriented festival, and all, different things like that. So, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still tough.
Yeah.
I mean,
It it
that
kind of
that
it kind of reminds me when I was, when I was working in insurance. And I remember my manager was like, try to, ABC, always be closing. And in my mind, I'm always thinking, if I was sitting in front of a person, like, the question I would ask, is, what can we do today to get you to buy this policy? That's what it made me think of right there. Like,
yes.
what can we do today to make you say yes to supporting this festival?
Yeah, what can I do to put you in this car today? Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um. So again, there are like so many things just running through my mind, and I feel like if I asked them, we would probably be here well into the
Yeah,
early
I'm
morning.
sure a few hours, like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I do want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to ask, because I know I mentioned this the last time we spoke, and this is also the same question that I've asked many of my other guests as well. Uh, I mean, what's been done, or what steps have you taken or plan to take to kind of develop the younger talent, or try to get younger people interested in filmmaking? Because because especially over the past few years, the arts have, in public schools, or I guess in educational institutions, have
Yeah.
seen cuts all over the place.
Yeah.
So so has your organization done anything to try to, like, I guess, fill that gap in what's been done to the arts, to try to get kids to, see that picking up a camera is just as valid as, I don't know, picking up a basketball, or I guess a microscope. I haven't been in school in a long time, so
Well, we obviously, and it's something we always have, especially at the beginning of the year, right? Ideas running through your mind about how can we improve the festival, and how can we kind of reach out more to support local filmmaking, which would of course include, young people. And so what we thought of was a screenwriting contest, separately. We've thought about a screenwriting contest, and also working with the high schools in the area, um, that that still have the arts, because we do have that in Alexandria, but to
right.
showcase them. There, I don't know that there's much we can do to cultivate them, but we can showcase them. Um, and I don't know, when it comes to high school, what types of kind of national recognition, in terms of competitions and contests. One thing that we did for years is we had a bank sponsorship, and they supported this filmmaking contest where high schoolers, actually not even high schoolers, I think it went all the way from middle school to high school, but it was an age restriction. I think it was like from 12 to 18. And so you would create a film about money, right? And, in some way, like saving money or whatever. And so we would, show up to kind of, present them with an award and then showcase their film in our festival. And we did that for years. And then that bank, I think, stopped, no longer supported it, but it is a cool thing to kind of have that spotlight. And for us, everything like that is always about personnel, and doing like a screenwriting competition, being able to help local filmmakers. And it's not just, we can do, sadly we can do, I would say it's not like we can do only so much, but there is just in our, small, like small manpower we have, is to, a filmmaker, young guy, I think this is his second film, needed advice on film locations and boosting them. And so, for us, I think we try not to take on more than we can handle, but the ideas we have are things that we think kind of would help boost us overall, and also spotlight and make us, even more kind of community oriented if we can help, spotlight young filmmaking. But I think, again, we have to see how this year kind of plays out in terms of the volunteers we have, even the ideas they have, and how we can cultivate them and what we're prepared to take on. That's always kind of, unfortunately with us, the limitation we have is what are we prepared to take on? For us, throughout the year, we'll have screenings. Screenings don't take as much manpower, just organizing and then day of. But when it comes to a screenwriting competition, seeking out high schools, having a connection with drama teachers or film teachers, we, in the past have showcased community college film students. We had a special showcase for them. And so we thought we were going to develop a relationship with one of the community colleges in the area, but it wasn't to be. And that's an example of something that doesn't take as much manpower, and it's something that kind of helps boost them. Because with these, filmmakers, they're shooting literally in our city, right? I mean, they're community college students. They're not shooting, in Texas or Florida or whatever. They're local. And so we did that for 2 years, and that's definitely something. And we've tried numerous times to try and get in touch with them. But I think now that I think about it, that's one thing that I think we would really like to do again, because that's something that, we can kind of help boost them a bit. And that's something that we definitely have the manpower to do. Just kind of have a separate showcase for them. And it's local, it's community outreach, and it's they're good films. So I think, when it comes to like encouraging young filmmaking, I don't know if we can showcase them, is what I would say we can do.
Yeah, because you did mention at the beginning of the conversation that a lot of the filmmakers who submit their work to the festival have connections to Alexandria.
Right.
So would you say it's sort of like, you kind of help develop them as far as you can offer, I guess, assistance. They go off and do their thing, and they come back once they've, made something of themselves and kind of showcase their work.
And I mean, that's something that like we can because the thing about it is if we have a filmmaker with a connection to Alexandria, we're really interested in showing their film. If we like it, we're really interested in showcasing their film. Like if, anytime we can boost Alexandria, the surrounding area, but obviously Alexandria, but anytime we can do that, we definitely do. But the only thing about cultivating is we're not large enough to do that. It'd be great if we are, because I know there, some film festivals, especially some that have like the big ticket sponsors like AT&T and Uber and all that stuff, they have paid staff, right? There's a lot they can do. But we try and do what we can with what we have, of course. And I think if we can kind of, do our part in boosting filmmakers that don't have visibility, that's something we're always prepared to do.
Now, have you reached out to other film festival organizers to try to pick their brains and see what they say or what they can offer?
Yes, we did that. We've done that a couple times. We've lost a few film festivals, but one of the probably more popular film festivals in DC is the Shorts Film Festival. They have, when I say sponsors, right, just talking about salivating on the sponsors that they have, but we did. And I don't know how it came about, but it was very illuminating. They're on a level, they're on like, they're way up there.
Yeah, they're on cloud nine. Yeah.
They're on cloud nine. There's a lot they're able to do. They have offices, they have staff, but one of the things it does is it gives you a sense of, obviously you're not able to do all the things they're able to do, right? But you can kind of say, on this night, they're doing this panel on something, or they had this thing, and you're like, maybe we can take one thing. But as Patty says, our executive, it's always about money, right? If we have the money to do it, we can do it. If we had the money, we would probably think about hiring a PR firm to, see what they might be capable of doing in terms of outreach and awareness. But it was illuminating going to the DC Shorts kind of info session. It was like an info session just to see, like, not only to just marvel at it, but just to see like what's possible, but like I said, we're not there yet. But it was quite illuminating, and it just kind of reinforced that you need the money and you need the manpower, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of excuse me, a lot of film festivals are able to kind of, they might stretch out the film festival over 2 weeks, and they might like, and it kind of, made us think about how we structure our film festival. For example, we do one weekend. Other film festivals, they might do, 2 showcases on a Monday, and then the following Monday do another 2 showcases and do that for like a month, right? And then, AFI, for example, they might run for a week and a half, and they'll have movies in 4 or 5 different venues, and they're showing films like Monday through Sunday, right, at all these different venues. And that's, I mean, the amount of money is insane. AFI obviously is on a different level too, but just to think about that, if you're a film festival, you think about putting a 6 showcases, right, on one day, in 2 theaters, against each other, so that a film goer might not be able to see all the films they want to, right? Versus showing certain features throughout the week. Would that be better? Like there's so many ideas you can think of. Like, we've always done it on Veterans Weekend, but, we've seen other festivals do it a lot differently. And it kind of makes us think like, what if we kind of did it kind of that way, where you're doing it like at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, and then maybe on a Saturday, maybe you can do 3 showcases, instead of 8 or whatever, things like that. It's interesting. Like, so that's kind of where we start thinking about, are we structuring our film festival wrong? Things like that, I think, is kind of what you start to think about. Yeah, I mean, and at the beginning of the year is when you start to kind of game plan things like that and what you might be able to do. Like right now, we have 1 venue confirmed, but that's it as of now. So we just have to see, going forward where we're going to be. If we're going to be back at AMC Hoffman. It was a difficult experience last year, and we just have to see. We lost our trusty projectionist last year, which is why we had some of the issues we had. And he's a professional projectionist. Like, this is his job. So he's expert level. It's hard to find, and he did it for free. It's hard to find that for free. And he took care of everything on a level we had no idea that he did until we had to do it. Right. And it's funny how that works, but yeah.
Well, I was gonna say too, because because your film festival's running at the same time as many other film festivals across the country as well.
And like, and we thought actually at the fundraising meeting, somebody had mentioned doing kind of an online hybrid thing. And, with the pandemic, what we did was, it was solely online for 2 years. And then the following year, we tried a hybrid option because, if you're like an All Fest Pass holder, you're supposed to have access to everything showing. Well, what if you're at AMC Hoffman, you want to watch a film, and then in the next hour or half hour, there's another film at a different location where you might not be able to go and come back, and what are you going to do? And what if they're up against each other in the theater? So it was something, I mean, we thought about it again, doing the hybrid option, but it was tough because let's say, for example, you, Luca, like if you bought an all festival pass for a festival, and so you missed out on certain films and you heard that we'll have films available online, would you assume that all the festival films would be online?
Yeah, I would.
A lot of people did, but that's not what happened. There were some films that, because of technical issues, weren't able to be shown in the theater or in the library. And so we showed them online. And people that had an All Fest pass assumed that everything that we showed was going to be available online. But it was almost like an addendum to the festival where we showed additional films. And people were pissed.
I would have been.
Yeah. And so we said, no, we're not doing that again. No, we're not doing that again.
Too much of a headache. It's like, we already did it once. We pissed off a bunch of people. We're not going down that route again.
No, and it's hard to communicate that. Not to mention, when you do it online, I guess what you would need, an MP3 essentially. So now you might be asking a filmmaker, so send us an MP3 version, also have a DCP ready. We might need a Blu-ray, like all these different things. It's a tough sell, right? And so, requesting that is tough. So we say it's either or, right? It was very successful though during the pandemic when we did it online, and a lot of people liked that they had 2 weeks to watch the films. That was great, and at that time, during the pandemic, everybody was streaming like crazy anyway, so they were used to that, and they really liked doing that. And what we did was we had our Q&As by Zoom. So, the whole issue, right, of time, after showcases, no issue. And we had great conversations with filmmakers for 20, 25 minutes. It didn't matter, so we would, upload that with the film, the Q&A. And that also allowed us to have more filmmakers available. So that was an interesting experience, but you just can't combine them. It just doesn't work.
Right. And I think, and I think the whole purpose of the film festival is to have that in-person, personal experience, to actually be there to see the film with other people in a theater, and having that one-on-one interaction. I mean, yes, you can have, that same, sort of the same level of interaction via Zoom or online, but it's just not the same.
It's not. And if you're interested in film, right, and that's generally why you go to film festival, you like proximity to the filmmaker, right? If the filmmaker's there, you want to ask questions, and if it's online, like the questions are there. And we had thought about, and this I don't know if this would have worked, but we had thought about doing a live Q&A, but we were like, we don't know if that would work, to do a live Q&A where they were answering questions right as they come in, and have a moderator do it. That was one of the things we thought of. But you can't do it for all the films, right? And doing time with different filmmakers, so you have to kind of limit that to a certain number of filmmakers. So that was like, oh boy, that's going to be tough. So it's just like, it has to be either or. We knew it's just either or. You're not going to be able to do the hybrid, because you got to have all the films available. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And oh my God, that was like the worst thing, because we were like, oh, this is great, because we can like have film festival extra, right? No, that did not work. So yeah.
But that was a good lesson to learn, though, because now because now if someone proposes that idea, you can quickly say,
yeah, and we told
work.
them no.
Yeah, and you have the experience to prove it.
Yeah.
Well, Dara, I do want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day
Sure.
to be to return to this podcast. If people want to learn more about the film festival, where can they go?
Well, our website is alexfilmfest.com, and you can learn more about how to volunteer, donate, and find out what exciting events we have upcoming in our area. And you can sign up for our newsletter.
Excellent.
Get all the great information that whatever we're doing every month, you can sign up to get our newsletter every month.
And you said, was it Monday? You're going to be starting the
March 4th is submissions. Yeah.
Submissions? Okay. Gotcha. Well, I definitely plan on having you return later on this fall to chat about the upcoming festival for this year. But I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. And if you're enjoying the content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, I appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Ciao.